All right, hi everyone. So this lesson is going to be a bit different than the one from yesterday. So today what we're going to do is we're going to learn how to build an actual application that you can use in your computer. So we're not talking about REPL IT anymore. We're not even talking about web development. We're talking about something with a window that you can click on that you can use. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through how I'm going to do that from start to finish. From creating the file, creating the folders in my computer, to installing the packages, to writing the code. I'm going to go through everything. So let's get started. Right here, what I did is I opened up Visual Studio Code. And we've used this before for web development, but we're going to use this now again for developing our desktop-based application. Also, I just want to point out that I've never actually done this before. So this is going to be a new experience for the both of us. And I may run into some trouble. So if whatever problems I have, you'll see what problems I had, and you'll see how I solved them. And hopefully that'll help you when you run into your own problems. So let's get started. We're going to create, we're just going to click on New File. This is the first window that we see when we open up Visual Studio. So let's create a new file. What I want to do is I want to create a Python file. So I'm just going to create window.py. And all right. Well, looks like I had to open a folder first. So actually here, I've got so this is my home folder. Got a few folders here. I think I'm going to go into Documents, and I'm going to create a new folder here. So let's see how I can do that. Okay, so I'm just going to add a new folder, and we're going to call that, let's see, Python experiments. All right. So we've created this folder called Python experiments, and now we're going to click the Open button and open this up in Visual Studio. Okay, so now we're going to try to create a new file again. Actually, let's just do it here. New file, and we're going to create window.py. All right, so now we've got a new Python file. So I actually just kind of hit the play button right here just to open up the terminal and all of this stuff. We're going to be doing all of our operations, all of our installing, everything needs to be done right here in the terminal in Visual Studio. So the first thing I want to do is I want to install a package. By a package, I mean an extra piece of code from another source. So if you remember, we worked with Colorify a few weeks ago in order to add color to some of our text. When we had to install that in REPL IT, this is the same concept. Someone else create a piece of code, and I want to use that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to check and make sure there's nothing else in my folder. It's just window.py. And then I'm going to do, we'll see if this works, pip install PySimpleGUI. So PySimple GUI. This should help me create a graphical interface. And by graphical interface, I mean something like, any of these applications we have here, right? So for example, something like this, watching a TV show. But there's buttons right here. There's all sorts of stuff we can manipulate and we can use on our desktop. That's an example of a graphical user interface, or GUI for short, which we have right here. So let's go ahead and hit enter and see if that works. All right, cool. Okay. Looks like I already installed it at some point. Didn't expect that, but that's perfect. Regardless if you run this command, it should work on both Windows and on Mac. This isn't going to be as nearly as complicated as working with Flask and web development. So let's get started. What I'm going to do is I'm going to type some code, And I'm going to try to explain what's going on as I type the code. And then we're going to run the code and we're going to see the window, and then I'll explain again. So you can see what was generated. You can see the window, the user interface that was generated, and the code side by side. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to import our package that we installed. So we're going to type in import PySimpleGUI. And we're going to import that as SG, which means that we're going to use this package. We're going to use this piece of code. But whenever we use it, we're just going to use SG, not the full name. So for example, right here, I am typing sg.theme. Dark amber. By the way, a theme, particularly in web development, just means color. So the color scheme of what we're creating is going to be dark amber, which is like kind of black and gold. I guess amber is kind of like gold. Anyways, moving on. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to create the layout of our user interface. So layout equals, we've got a two-dimensional array here. So we've got one array, and then we've got another array, another set of arrays. And each of these is going to be what we see and what we can click on in our user interface. So we're going to start with sg.text. We're going to call this my first window. So this isn't exactly going to be the name of our window, but it's going to be some text that we show in our window. So, all right, yeah, we've got that so far. And then we're going to have sg.input text. So right here, we're going to allow the user to type something in. And whatever they type in is going to be stored in a variable that is denoted by in. We'll go through how this is used further down. All right, key in, and we got to have a comma right here. Do that. Let's do, I'm gonna have that. Let's do that. And let's do this. Okay. We're going to have sg.submit. So we're going to have a button where the user can submit information and a button where the user can cancel the whole thing. Or at least a button that says cancel. We'll see what happens. So we've got that. This is our layout. Again, our layout is what goes in our window. So what the user can click, what the user can type, what information we're going to give the user. So we've created our layout. Then we're going to create something called a window, which is what encloses our layout. So it's pretty much the whole thing. So for example, right here, if we've got in this application right here, all of the stuff inside here would be considered the layout. And then this stuff right here, exiting the window, and everything that kind of wraps all of this on the inside will be considered our window. So our window is kind of the wrapper, our layout is what goes on inside. So we've got sg again, .window. And let's call this something interesting. Let's say IBDP1's first window. All right, and then we're gonna type in layout, and this layout right here is referring to this two-dimensional array we created right here. It's going right over there. Okay, so we've got that. Next, we've got event and values. I'm gonna type in window.read. So event is a variable that keeps track of what the user clicks on and how the user interacts with our window and with our layout. And values keeps track of what the user types in or what the user enters. And these are both received. I know you guys have never seen notation like this before, but when we run this function, window.read, we get two outputs. So we're getting event and we're getting values. So we'll use values when we're getting some data and trying to manipulate some data, and event when we're trying to react to what the user is doing. And then we've got window.close. And that just kind of closes our window up after everything is done, after we've submitted. And after we close our window, we're going to have another window pop up, but this is a really simple window called a pop-up window. So we almost don't need to write any code for it at all or do any configuration. So sg.popup, you entered, you entered, and then values in. So values is an array, right? And well, it's actually technically a different data structure, a dictionary. But regardless, what I want you to do is make the connection here. So right here we had key equals in. So we have this right here, which is also being used down here. That means that whatever the user types in right here is what we're going to see right here. What the user types in right here is grabbed using window.read, and it's stored in values. Hence, we're using values right down here. All right. This is actually all of our code to do this. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to run it, and then I'm going to, once you can kind of see how it's working, I'm going to make the connection to the code. Okay, so right here, let's go ahead and run this. Let's see whether it works or whether it doesn't. I honestly don't know what's going to happen. Okay, cool. Looks like it worked. So this is what we got, right? So right here, IBDP's first window is the name of the window. And if we put this side by side right here, we can see that we did this right here, IBDP's first window. We showed the user some text. We let the user input some stuff. We've got a little form field right here where the user can input something. And we've got a submit and cancel button. And we're going to see what both of these are going to do in a second. All right. So let's just type in some stuff right here. Good evening. All right. Let's click the submit button. Click submit, and then we've got you entered good evening. So notice whatever we typed in right here in this field up here made its way down here like we said it would. All right. Also, the window closed. Now we can just click OK, and we can exit out of it. And all of this stuff here, so basically just the program stopped. So let's run it again, and let's see what cancel does. So we've got cancel. All right, so we're going to type something in right here. We're going to type in, okay, we're going to type in, let's just say hello. We're not going to do anything with it. So we'll click cancel, and it didn't really do anything. We'll most likely have to add some additional functionality, just make it exit later on. But for now, it worked at a very basic level, and that's our first application. What I want to do now is I just want to play around with this a little bit, and I kind of want to see what else I can do with this. So why don't we do something different? Like, let's get some numerical input from the user. So let's get some numbers from the user. And let's see if we can't output some calculations, all right? So today, for example, we had the user, or actually not the user, we had you, calculate the volume of a sphere. So what I want to do actually is I want the user to input their name, and I want them to input the radius of a sphere, and I want to see their name, and I want to see the volume of their sphere afterwards. So right here, let's kind of just change this to name. Let's personalize this a little bit. Make that name. And let's add another input box. sg.input text. text key equals, let's say, radius. All right. Okay. So we've got that. I spell out, put a Q instead of a G. So let's just kind of run this and just see whether this works. First off, so let's just save that and let's just run that. All right. So we got an error right here. It says list indices must be integers or slices, not tuple. So what's different about what we did right here? Ah, okay. Missed a comma. That's what it was. So let's run that again. Okay, cool. Got another application right here. We've actually got two inputs. All right. And let's change this text up here and let's just say calculate volume of sphere. Okay. So we've got that. And let's just run this again and just see what we get. So calculate volume of sphere. Got two inputs. We'll have someone type their name, and then we will output the volume of the sphere. But before we do that, I want to see like whether we can actually display more than one value right here, because we have this string, and then we've got whatever was entered here. So we're going to change that to name. So right here, we're only displaying one value in the pop-up. So let's just say, let's do something like that. Values name. And we're kind of using the same notation we use with the print statement where we had commas. So values name entered. Say entered. And then let's try to get the radius. Let's see whether this will work the way that we think it might. Radius. All right, cool. I don't know if this is going to work. Let's give it a try. So we're going to hit Control-C and exit out of the currently running program. It's this one right here. And then let's just run this and see what happens. Okay, cool. So I'm going to type in my name, and then I'm going to type in like 54. And we've got emit entered 54. Awesome. So now we've got access to both of these. But instead of just like outputting what was input by the user, I want to calculate the volume of the sphere. And I'm going to do that using a function. So from now on, especially when you're building large pieces of code, it's really important that you use functions. This helps separate pieces of code from each other, make it easier to read, and also makes it reusable. So I'm going to be a good example, and I'm going to use a function right here to calculate the volume of the sphere. So if you remember from the slideshow, we need to use Py. So import math. Don't really need to install anything from that. I hope that works. And okay, we're going to create a function called def calculate sphere volume. And then our input's just going to be a radius. So volume equals 4/3 times pi, math.py, times, this is the one I forgot, right? Radius cubed. Cool, all right. So you got that, and we're just gonna return volume, all right? So we got a really simple function right here. And actually we need to put this above. So I think probably, I'm gonna put this right above sg.pop, because in order to use this function down here, the code for the function needs to be above right here. So for example, in this line right here, if we want to use calculate sphere volume, then our function needs to be above this somewhere. Because if we haven't created the function already, then we can't use it. So that's why we put this up here, above the line where we're going to use it. So we've got name coming from here. We've got radius coming from here. One thing I want to do before I go about doing this is I want to check what the data type is of radius, because remember, it needs to be an integer, a float, for us to be able to do math on it. So let's do that first. So we're going to save this. We've created this function. That's cool. We can use that later. But I'm just going to do print. Then I'm going to do type, which is the function for checking data type. And then values radius. Let's see what we get. All right, let's run that. And let's look right back down here at our terminal, because this is going to get printed out in the terminal right down here. All right. So let's just go ahead and run that. Maybe we have an error, maybe we don't. Okay, so looks like I need to put some stuff in here. Commit 43, submit. Okay, and it looks like that was a string actually. So if you see right down here where we printed this out, we had string. So what that means is that we need to cast this before using it. All right. So how we're going to do this is, we'll get rid of this in a second. Let's use an example. We're going to type in sg.popup. Hello. Well, actually, let's not get too fancy. Let's just do the volume is, and then we're going to do we're going to cast it first. Well, actually, let's just do that beforehand, just to make things a little bit simpler. So let's say float radius equals float values radius float values radius and all right, why is there something wrong there? Okay, looks good. We can get rid of this now that we know what the data type is of the radius. All right, so we did that. Cool. So now our radius is in floating type, is a float. So what we want to do now is we want to use our function up here to calculate the volume and output it to the user. So let's create another line, volume of sphere. Sphere equals calculate sphere volume, float radius, and what's wrong? Okay, no, that's good. Sometimes VS Code can be a little laggy, and that kind of freaks me out, but after a second, it pretty much tells the truth. So there we go, we did that. So we should be calculating the volume of the sphere here. And we're going to get rid of, well, let's just keep this as an example. The volume is volume of sphere. Let's see how that works. I don't know whether it's going to want this to be in a string or not. I'm not really sure. We'll see what happens. All right, so we're going to save that. We're going to run that. Okay, so we've got emit, and then we've got 34. Let's see. Okay. That looks, I guess that makes sense. 34 to the power of 3. Okay, that's fair enough. All right, looks good. So let's just do a little recap of what we did today. All right. Or what you need to do, because you're going to have homework that's going to be similar but not the same. So right here we've got import PySimpleGUI, and we got PySimpleGUI by initially installing it using pip install GUI. So this right here is going to be how you install PySimpleGUI. And I'll send you a tutorial as well that gives a bit more detail on how to do this, but it's just one line of code. So we need to install this first and then import this right here. Our theme, this basically controls what colors are in the window. Actually, let me just run this again so we have the window to work with simultaneously. Our layout is our layout is basically all of these things inside the window. So we create input fields, we create text, we create buttons using this layout, this two-dimensional array layout. I say two-dimensional array because this is an array within arrays. We've got these square brackets outside, and then we've got everything inside here in bracket notation. So this is an array of four arrays, each with one element inside of them. Or actually, this one would be two elements right here. So just keep this open. We gave the window a title using this line right here. We got the values from the window using this line. And this line, we didn't talk a ton about how this works, but this will get more important as we go along. This just tells us that we're closing the window, presumably when we click submit or cancel. And this right here was how we saw the smaller window that popped up after we submitted our information from here. Values radius, that's just as getting information from up here, from the input text. This values variable followed by this particular key. So this key, or this text radius right here, was up here as well. And that's how we got the value from here, all the way from here to here. Then we had a function, a pretty simple function, to calculate the volume of the sphere, and then output that here in sg.pop. So that's just a summary of how you can create your first application in Python. Well, not necessarily your first application, but the first one you can actually click on, and that someone without any programming experience could use. So I want you to go in, I want you to complete, so I want you to run this code. So go through the tutorial, and at the same time that you see me writing this code, you go ahead and do it. And then I'm going to give you some homework where you're going to have to apply what you learned. So you're basically going to have to take this code and edit it in some way just to show that you understand what you did here. So I hope that was helpful. And I hope you saw maybe some of the mistakes I made, and I hope that those will help you not make the same mistakes. Enjoy the video, and your homework will be online. Have a nice day.